Bitcoin Ordinals and Inscriptions, Bitcoin stamps and BRC20 tokens. These are all bringing a tsunami of transactions onto Bitcoin. What are they all? Is this the future of Bitcoin? Well, watch this video till the very end and you'll find out exactly what they are. What is an ordinal? An ordinal is a protocol that allows you to inscribe data into Satoshis on the Bitcoin blockchain. Up until now, they've been mostly used for NFTs, and there's a big difference between an NFT on Bitcoin than there is an NFT on the likes of Ethereum. An NFT on the likes of Ethereum is a token that basically points to a different place where a piece of art or something is stored. Whereas an ordinal and an inscription on Bitcoin is actually inscribed right into the Bitcoin chain. So let's have a look at some details about what ordinals and inscriptions are. Ordinals are basically a numbering scheme for Satoshis that allows tracking and transfer of individual stats. Now remember, a Bitcoin is made up of 1 million Satoshis. And as these Satoshis are actually minted on the blockchain or mined on the blockchain, they're given an ordinal, which is a number. The ordinal numbers have a few different representations. So they have integers, decimal, degrees, and they also have percentile. And it's these ordinals that allow us to inscript data into the actual Satoshi. So I'm going to jump across to inscriptions. And basically inscriptions inscribe stats with arbitrary content. So these can be images, they could be music files, they could be program files, and they create Bitcoin native digital artifacts, more commonly known as NFTs. But what inscriptions don't need, like Ethereum and stuff, is a sidechain or a separate token. Now they work using the UTXO. So what is a UTXO? Well, this is basically how Bitcoin works. So let's say I have 1 Bitcoin in my wallet and I want to send you, very nicely of me, half a Bitcoin. Well, to do that, I'm going to have to use my 1 Bitcoin and make a transaction with that entire Bitcoin. And that entire Bitcoin then gets split down into 2 UTXOs. These are unspent transactions. Half of it gets sent to you because I want to send it to you, and half of it comes back to me. So the original UTXO that contained my Bitcoin is now gone, and 2 further UTXOs have now been created. And this is how Bitcoin overcomes the double spend problem. Now, these transactions addresses and UTXOs are normally Bitcoin transactions and addresses. But in this case, we add additional data to them. We inscribe additional data to these stats, which allow us to have the NFTs on the Bitcoin blockchain. Now, inscription content is entirely on-chain, stored in a taproot script path. Spent scripts. Now, Taproot was an upgrade that was done on Bitcoin in 2001, and it allowed for a greater amount of data to be stored in a block, as well as for other upgrades that happened on the blockchain. And for you to use an ordinal, for you to mint an ordinal, or for you to receive an inscription or an ordinal, you need to have a Taproot type address. So that is basically what ordinals are. Now, ordinals have created, or inscriptions have created, a huge amount of activity on the Bitcoin blockchain. And I'm just going to refresh the page here, because this page that we're looking at here is Dune.com, and it is an analytics page. And it's shown us here that the total inscriptions to date have been 908,000. Now, from this 908,000 inscriptions, 159 Bitcoin has been paid in fees to mint these ordinals or to mint these inscriptions, which equates to $4.5 million. Now, these are additional fees that miners are earning. Now, looking to the future of Bitcoin, as the halvings happen and there's less and less Bitcoin available to be mined, being able to earn running a node by fees is actually going to become more and more important. However, I'm saying that the big Bitcoin maxis out there aren't all in favor of ordinals and inscriptions, as they feel that this is a waste of the space in a block on the blockchain. However, Bitcoin is a decentralized database and anybody is free to build on it as they wish. If we just scroll down on this analytics here, we can also see how fast these ordinal and inscriptions have been growing. So we can see here, beginning this in February, that it's really still peaking now in April when this video is being recorded. We can also see that the fees seem to have already peaked. Now the fees are going to be based on the size of the data placed within the ordinal or the inscription. So the bigger the bytes, the more amount of bytes that you want to use to mint your NFT, the bigger the fee that you're going to pay for this. Now, if we scroll down a little bit further, we can also see the types of NFTs or ordinals that have been minted. We've got some audio files, we have images, we have other applications, text, more application, images, audio and text. And we can see a breakdown of them here, and we can see this is more over time how it's been done. Again, we can see it here, inscription by type here. So these are growing really fast. Now, along with these inscriptions and these ordinals, a lot of original NFTs that were minted on Ethereum are now porting over and being minted on the Bitcoin blockchain as ordinals. We now have ordinal punks available on the Bitcoin blockchain, and we can see that the floor price of these is currently 11.5 Bitcoin. We've got Bitcoin rocks, and this is on ordinalart.com. We've got Bitcoin rocks, which is coming in at 9.86 for a simple rock. We've got ordinal loops, and we've got many other collections available as well. Now, if you want to mint or if you want to receive a Bitcoin ordinal and an inscribed ordinal, you need to have a Taproot Bitcoin wallet. So this is one of the later Taproot wallets, and it begins with the letter B, whereas other wallets might begin with the letter 1 or with the number 1, excuse me. It's also important to note that these are attached to Satoshis. So if you want to receive one of these, you have to make sure that you're not going to actually spend it again. So you'd want to make sure and send it to somebody in a spend by accident. So you'd want to make sure that you have a separate wallet for storing your ordinals and your inscriptions in. Otherwise, when you're making a spend, you're not going to know which one Satoshi from another. And when you go and try and send one to somebody to pay for something, you might wrongly discard of your NFT, which would be quite a big shame. So as we have seen there are quite a lot of NFTs available, but it doesn't just stop there. We also now have Bitcoin stamps, and Bitcoin stamps are unprunable UTXO art because stats don't exist. And I'm on stampchain.io. So what do we mean by unprunable? Well, with the ordinals, somebody running a Bitcoin node can choose to filter these out. So they can prune them so they're not actually visible and showing on their particular node. But Bitcoin stamps are not prunable, and we'll get into a little bit more why now in a moment. Now, I found this brilliant tweet from Trust Machine that really explains what Bitcoin stamps is, and we're going to go through that now. Bitcoin stamps is a new way of storing images directly on the Bitcoin, but they're very different to ordinals. Now, I would argue that it's not exactly a new way of doing it because it uses the counterparty option, which is quite an old option, and it was an option that was used by peeps quite some time ago. The transaction actually looks like this. So it comes in and it's broken down into loads of different bits. So let's talk through it. Bitcoin stamps, which were created by Mike in Space, are a new way of storing images directly on Bitcoin natively. So they're stored on chain. Stamps are split up the stamps split up the image into a bunch of tiny pieces, spread it across many unspent transactions, and then reconstruct them on the other end. And we've got a great little clip here from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory where they try and zap a bar of chocolate, break it down, send it across space and send it through to a television. You can see it transacting here and coming out the television at the other end in one piece. And that's basically how stamps work. Now, stamps use a few existing technologies, mainly counterparty, to work. Counterparty, as I said, was introduced some time ago in 2014, and it was a protocol built on top of Bitcoin. And Rare Peeps, regarded as the first NFT collection before the term NFT was even invented, were powered by Counterparty. Now, creating one of these Bitcoin stamps is pretty easy. First, you take your image and then you convert it into a text file, specifically base64. So here's an example of a logo converted into a text file. We then take this encoded text and we add the word stamp on front of it and we broadcast it to the Bitcoin network using the counterpart protocol. And this splits the text into multiple parts. Each part is given a unique number so it can be properly decoded or put back together. Counterparty uses transaction types known as P2SH or Pay to Script Hash. So this is a way to securely send Bitcoin by paying to an address linked to a script. And this is why they cannot be pruned because of the way you're actually paying for these. So it provides extra security as it requires multiple signatures when you use a multi-sig wallet in order to send the funds. Using this method, each of these parts will become a multi-sig unspent transaction output. That is why Bitcoin stamp transactions look the way they do. Every full Bitcoin node has no choice but to store stamps as part of the network because Bitcoin stamps are made up of simple unspent transactions and they're not prunable in the same way that witness data is, and it's the witness data that's used for the ordinals and the inscriptions. So basically they are impossible to actually filter out. Now, to create a stamp, stampers have to pay a fee, just like any other Bitcoin transaction. And it's byte for byte, so it's more expensive to create a Bitcoin stamp than it is to create an ordinal. Ordinals utilize witness data to store the inscriptions, which natively receives a fee discount. Now, because these cost an awful lot more, Bitcoin stamp recommendations are that the image size is 24 by 24 pixels with 8-bit color depth, just like the CryptoPunks. And we have some examples down here. So this is a really interesting way, again, of using Bitcoin, but it is actually going backwards a little bit in terms of it using counterparty. Now, you can't use Bitcoin stamps with the Taproot wallet. You do need to have a counterparty compatible wallet address to have stamps in. If we hop over to Mike in Space and to his GitHub page, and I'm going to drop a link to all of these pages in the comments below here. Basically, it goes through exactly what I've said there. Storing art on the blockchain as a method of achieving permanence is often a misnomer in the NFT world. NFTs are merely image pointers to centralized hosting, whereas with stamps, it's actually saved on the particular chain. So we've got stamps and we've got ordinals, and ordinals are more cost effective and they can have larger amounts of data than the stamps. But then comes along, because of ordinals, we now have something new that's come along. And what we have now, because using ordinal technology, is experimental fungible tokens, which are BRC20 tokens. Now this is basically experimental, and it is created using ordinals and inscriptions and saved on the Bitcoin base chain. It utilizes ordinal inscriptions of JSON data. How simple is that? To deploy token contracts, mint tokens, and to transfer tokens. Now, there is a website, the BRC20.io website, that lists all these BRC20 tokens that have actually been minted on the blockchain using this approach and using this method. And the first one was ORDI. Now we can see this already has a market cap of 2 million. There was 21 million of these and 100% of them have already been minted. So people are seeing value in the fact that you can now mint a BRC20 token, but these BRC20 tokens are not like ERC20 tokens on the Ethereum network. In fact, these were created just for fun and as an experiment, but they really seem to have taken off. We see this meme one has been 100% of it has been minted, even though there is no price. Punks, going back to the punk art that we see here, punks have now minted a token to go along with their ordinal. So have Pepe's minted a token, and we can see these are 100% minted. Now these BRC20 tokens were created by Domo Data, which you can find on Twitter. And he has said, and I'm going to go into some of his documentation, this is just a fun experimental standard demonstrating that you can create off-chain balance states with encryptions. It by no means should be considered the standard for fungibility on Bitcoin with ordinals, as I believe there's a better design choice and optimization out there. Now he does go on to say that he believes Taro, which is a solution that's being built on the Lightning Network. And this allows you to mint tokens and send them across the Lightning Network, and obviously using Bitcoin because Lightning is on top of Bitcoin. However, he was doing this as an experiment, and although he was doing it as an experiment, we can see that people have really jumped on board with this. Now let's think about this and the bigger picture for a moment. If we have ordinal NFTs, or if we have Bitcoin stamps, and we have tokens that are attached to these, this provides additional utility for the NFT. These NFTs on Bitcoin are a little bit, in my mind, of a step backwards. They're a step backwards because when we had NFTs at the start on Ethereum, they were nothing more than JPEGs, and utility along with them didn't really exist. And that's what we have with the first lot of ordinals and with the first lot of stamps. There was no utility attached to these. But now if we had a standard token, we may be able to add this additional utility that would really give these ordinals and these stamps a little bit of value. Now I'm going to jump over to a website, Unistat.io, and Unistat.io allows you to basically check out all of the BRC20 tokens, and it allows you to create inscriptions on the Bitcoin blockchain. Now there's many ways you can do this now, and there are also now marketplaces, which in the start there wasn't. Hyro Wallet is one of those wallets that will really help you manage your ordinals by setting you up with a separate address and all, just to save your collectibles in. But on Unistat, you can create an inscription with a file, you can create it with a text, and you can also create your BRC token or mint one of these BRC20 tokens that you see here. You can easily mint one here. In addition to this, you can also mint a .stats name. So I could have Paula at .stats, or you can have your own name at .stats. And these will be inscribed into actual Satoshis and be native on the blockchain and be there forever. So is this the future of Bitcoin? Does this really have any value? Well, there's two sides to this argument, and the Bitcoin maxis will all say that this is really not a great use of the space on a blockchain and they wouldn't be very much for it. However, it was the Bitcoin maxis that all went ahead with the Taproot upgrade. And it's the Taproot upgrade that allowed for all this extra functions to actually happen on the Bitcoin blockchain. And Bitcoin being decentralized in nature means that anybody can experiment and build on top of it, like these creators here have done. As I said, on the other side of the story is, well then, can we not have more? What can we add to Bitcoin to create more value other than the store of value? What happens when all of the Bitcoins are mined? How are the Bitcoin miners going to actually earn any money? And a good way to see that is through fees. And we've seen back here that already since the beginning of February, so in only 2 months, that we've already had 4 million in fees paid to the Bitcoin miners, in addition to normal fees that would have been paid to Bitcoin miners for sending transactions back and forth to one another. Do I think any of these ordinals or any of these stamps or even BRC20 tokens have any value? Well, maybe from a historical point of view, because we know that historical NFTs, as some of them are being called on Ethereum, such as the original punks that were minted, are considered to have value because they were one of the first NFTs minted on the blockchain. So the ordinals are one of the first NFTs to be minted on the blockchain using Taproot and this ordinal protocol, as with stamps, as with BRC20 tokens. However, as Domo Data quite pointed out, that Taro is a better solution, and there's also Stacks offering a solution. Stacks is a separate layer 1 that uses Bitcoin for finality. And on Stacks, you're going to have NFTs, you're going to have DeFi, and all these other products that you see on other blockchains. And these may offer a better, longer, more permanent solution that provides an awful lot more value than these ordinals and these inscriptions. So what do you think of ordinals and inscriptions? Have you been using them? Have you bought any stamps? Have you engaged with any BRC20 tokens? If so, I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments below. But if all of this wasn't enough for you, why don't you watch this video now on the screen about Aptos to find out my opinion of whether Aptos is worth its value or not.